You'll see we're wearing masks. I would suggest, council, when you give your report, feel free to take that off so the public can hear you. And to also speak up because this is being taped and we've had problems with the volume. I would also ask any member on council to refrain from texting during the meeting. It can be disruptive and annoying if your text is not muted, especially. And at this time, I would ask that you please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you do a roll call, please?
Mayor Diekman.
Here.
President Percival.
Here.
Vice President Bull.
Here.
Councilman Capabianco.
Here.
Councilman Long.
Here.
Councilman Swider.
Here.
Councilman Sidlow.
Here.
Councilwoman Guy.
Here.
Chief Murray.
Here.
Emergency Management Coordinator Powers.
Here.
Solicitor Wills.
Here.
Engineer Catania.
Here.
We have one.
Thank you. Councils have an opportunity to read the minutes of the previous meeting. With your pleasure, please.
Make the motion to pass last month's minute.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. Mrs. Higgins, do you have any correspondence this evening?
I do. During the month, excuse me, the month of June, the money that came in through the borough office, licenses and inspections, $7,263. State police fines, $429.47. Recorder of deeds, $2,332.40. From the police department for parking tickets, $115. Court financial services, $12.50. Under tax collection, the borough tax collector, Ed Fisher, $46,999.35. Tax claim bureau, $3,686.58. And from district court, $202.32. For a total income in June that does not include EIT or LST taxes, $61,040.62. I do have a letter here, and this is addressed to President Percival. And good evening, Parkside Council. I am writing this letter to address an issue I had with Councilwoman Guy. I joined the free speech page several weeks ago, and it is anything but free speech, unless, of course, you fit the narrative of Councilwoman Guy and her 5 usual cronies. The page was obviously created to push her Democratic agenda since it wasn't being allowed on the other 2 Parkside pages. You do not have free speech on that page. The minute you comment on something that contradicts or conflicts with their ideology, or if your opinion differs from theirs, they all attack like bees that just had their hive disturbed. My most recent issue with Guy was back on June 27th. Councilwoman Guy made a post on her free speech page that did not pertain to our town of Parkside, PA, which blatantly defies and directly violates rule number 1 on that page, which states that all posts should relate to Parkside. So I called her out for breaking the rule, and I was immediately removed from the group. Then she privately messaged me asking for my address so she could stop by and say hi, and went on to say that I wouldn't be allowed back in the group until I proved my residency. Now, I have lived here for almost 20 years, and I have plenty of people that know me and can vouch for me, so I consider this a cowardly act, a form of discrimination and harassment, as no other member of that page has to prove their residency. Now, if everyone on that page had to give their address to join the group, that's one thing. But for me to be singled out is pure discrimination. That's a definition of it. The fact that she wanted to stop by when I don't know this lady and never spoke to her once in person, I don't know if I'd consider that harassment or stalking. You can make the call on that. Not to mention that kicking me off the page is a violation of my First Amendment rights, as she is suppressing my freedom of speech. Pretty ironic to get kicked out of a free speech group for something you said, isn't it? That is how Councilwoman Guy runs that group. Agree with what I say or get punished. That my friends is called dictatorship and is horrific to think that someone with that kind of mindset on council. Just last month, Councilman Sidlow was condemning citizens for exercising their Second Amendment right as he was exercising his First Amendment right. It seems like 2 of the 3 Democrats that were just appointed and sworn in think that they get to pick and choose which constitutional rights they support and which ones they don't. They seem to think they can control which constitutional rights citizens can exercise and which ones they can't. Can someone please tell them it doesn't work like that? I would also like to share that Councilwoman Guy openly admitted to creating a fake social media account to secretly gain access to other Parkside Facebook pages. I've heard this is a violation according to the PA Code of Crimes. I personally would like to see Councilwoman Guy resign. She is not someone I would want to be involved in the local Parkside government. She always seems to have nothing but excuses for not doing her job or assignments asked of her going by previous council meetings. I feel she has zero interest in working for our community and just merely ran for office so she could use her political position as a platform to push her personal agenda. I have included some screenshots to be shared publicly. I would like to thank all of you for your time and service. Sincerely, Ron Markowitz, concerned Parkside resident. And I don't know if you want me to read these screenshots. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mrs. Higgins on correspondence? Moving on to the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. President Council told me that I can only speak for 10 minutes. I'm not allowed to move. Hammer set up the race. Let me give you the mayor's report for last month. There were 18 crimes reported in June, 8 thefts from, I believe they were unlocked vehicles. 3 attempted thefts, 1 attempted burglary, 1 harassment, 1 disorderly conduct, 1 assault, 2 vandalisms, 1 identity theft. There were 87 calls for service, of which 3 were domestic, 2 were suspicious persons, 6 were medical emergencies, 3 were neighbor disputes, 9 were public service calls, 1 was an automobile accident, and there were 4 vehicle stops. So that's the report from the police.
Thank you.
22 July 2020, the Honorable Shirley Percival, President, Borough Council, Borough of Parkside, Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Greetings. Under the authority granted to me as Mayor of the Borough of Parkside, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and as stated in Pennsylvania 3301 at 3A1 BC, this letter will serve as notification, official notification to Borough Council that ordinance number 561, the noise ordinance, is vetoed in toto. The veto is based on the following considerations. The ordinance as written is ambiguous, arbitrary, overreaching, and in some cases unenforceable. Section 2 at 1164, B1B. The subsection fails to address the noise coming from moving vehicles. As written, it could be interpreted as applying only to stationary vehicles, and yet vehicles in motion can emit noise, which would be considered in violation of the ordinance. That being noted, even inclusion of moving vehicles would make the subsection unenforceable on the part of the code enforcement officer, because the code enforcement officer lacks the authority to make traffic stops. B1C, the subsection makes note of the term, quote, common carrier. The term common carrier does not apply to a certain type of vehicle. A common carrier is an entity, again, quote, that advertises to the public that it is available for hire to transport people or property in exchange for a fee, end of the quote. This definition renders this subsection irrelevant to the ordinance in that vehicles owned by the common carrier would be included in B1B above. B2B. This subsection is ambiguous in the use of the phrase within a noise-sensitive zone. Nowhere in the ordinance is a noise-sensitive zone defined, either in meaning or in location. Is the entire borough to be considered a noise-sensitive zone, or does council intend to dedicate parts of the borough as noise-sensitive zones? In order to do that, the council would need to pass either a separate ordinance or include an addendum on this ordinance. Also, signage would be required notifying the public that a noise-sensitive zone exists. B3. This section is ambiguous, and it could be interpreted as allowing shouting and outcry between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. B4, this section is arbitrary. Interpretation of laws, statutes, and ordinances must never be left to the citizen. By placing a time period of 30 minutes as an enforcement tool, the ordinance allows the citizen that luxury and renders this subsection unenforceable. In order to properly enforce the subsection, police officer or code enforcement officer would be required to remain at the site of the complaint for a minimum of 30 minutes in order to decide if a violation has occurred. If the officer were to arrive 15 minutes after the complaint call, that officer has no way of knowing if the complainant was truthful or if the complainant, in fact, had time the animal. It is highly unlikely that a complaint concerning this subsection would pass judicial muster. B6, the subsection casts too wide a net based on the phrase construction work or activity without defining the difference between what could be termed nuisance noise and or necessary construction noise. While it would be true that a private citizen digging up his front yard to repair a water leak at 2 a.m. would likely be considered a violation of the ordinance, the same noise generated by the water company digging up the street to repair a water main break at the same time would not be considered a violation. However, the wording of this subsection lumps both into the same category and leaves the latter operation in jeopardy of being a violation. Finally, B7A. This subsection is overreaching. The phrase "at any time or place so as to annoy or disturb the quiet" renders the subsection unenforceable. The legal definition of a public street is, quote, a street dedicated to public use and available to the public's unrestricted use without regard to the judicial authority responsible for its operation and maintenance. If at any time between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. the citizens of Parkside wish to yell, shout, hoot, whistle, or sing in the public streets, the council should reconsider its authority to deny them the right, let alone punish them for exercising that right. Having outlined my reasons for my veto and having met the time restraints of the Commonwealth Code, I thank you. Respectfully submitted this 22nd day of July, Thomas G. Deaton, Mayor, Borough. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have anything else this evening?
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything else this evening? At this time, if any citizen has anything that they wish to address council on concerning agenda items only. This would be agenda items only. Hearing none, we'll move on to the president's report. I would like to remind all council that has a budget for your committee. We're going to start thinking budget time. Also, I had spoken with the treasurer today, and please have your figures ready for August so we would move into budget time for September. I would also like to entertain a motion to give a kind donation to the Parkside Fire Company in the amount of $10,000, which was budgeted.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? So moved. My recommendation, and I spoke with Councilman Schwager on this, and I think the majority of council's in agreement, is to cancel all of our recreation events until next year. We have no way of keeping the entire community safe and healthy for any of the events that are left this year. And Councilman Schwager and I did speak about it, many alternatives as to how we could do this. And it just came down to the bottom line of not being able to keep the public safe at this point. And I'd like to thank Ms. Catania for calling me today with some really good news. We have received notice from the County of Delaware that we have received our 2020 Community Development Block Grant funds in the amount of $93,600 for the pedestrian improvements along Edgemont Avenue. So I'm very excited that we can move into phase 3, which will incorporate the installation of pedestrian lighting along the border towards the city of Chester to Beechwood. We're going to have 4 new lights there, along with the associated foundations, wiring, junction boxes. And I thank Ms. Catania again and her crew for all the hard work. And I would like to ask that a letter be sent out to OHCD, attention to the Assistant Director, Phil Welsh, for all his help, concern, and suggestions on this grant, please. So I'm very excited to know we're going to move into another phase with that project that was started several years ago.
Thank you, Lisa.
And that's all I have this evening, unless somebody else has a question.
Is there a copy of that proposal that's been circulated? Is that available to be reviewed too? So it's 4 streetlights.
I'm not sure what proposal you're referring to.
The,
The application,
yeah.
the application is here in the office, if you'd like to review that.
Okay.
There is no proposal at this point. We'll have a sub-recipient meeting, where OHCD will provide the contracts, the sub-recipient agreements with borough officials. Borough official has to attend that. That, I think, has to be set up by August the 10th, if I recall correctly. The reason that we are going to have a lapse between what we have currently and the lights that we're going to be putting in, because Phil had contacted us after we had put the application in OHCD office and said we are not eligible for lights just along the one side as we were proposing. However, with the addition of areas in Chester City, we were able to do those 2 blocks. That's why we're doing these areas that we're doing. Because currently, the borough does not have any eligible areas for improvement projects. So that gives us an eligible area in those first 2 blocks. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. There is no proposal at this point. That proposal will come once we have the sub-recipient agreement. We'll go into the design phase. This will include all the junction boxes. So all we'll have to do once we get moving on a next phase be to place the foundations and the lights. All the wiring will be in. They do give us that. So we'll then do a bid package and we'll go out for bid, but not before it's approved, reviewed and approved by OHCD. So right now, the only thing that's available is the application.
I'd like to take a moment. Mr. Powers is here. Mr. Powers is now the president of Parkside Fire Company. If you'd like to come up for 1 minute, I'd like to give you some money.
For me personally?
I don't know if the check is your name, but let me check on that. Every year we try to budget something for the fire company. Last year, for this year's budget, we budgeted $10,000. We've done that for 4 or 5 years now. 4 years? And at this time, I'd like to present the president of the fire company a check for $10,000 to be used as they see fit.
Sarah, do that again. Sarah.
Don't spend this.
Thank you for your support, council. I'll hand everything to the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Acting president.
Yeah. Is that check's going around? Could you just leave it there? You're making his way around. everyone will notice that our junior council person is here. It's nice to see you. She has been excused for the summer, but asked to come in tonight. I don't think she has a report. We planted flowers. Yes, she did a great job. And we thank you for the donation of them too. Appreciate it. Moving on to public safety, Councilman Capabianco.
Thank you, Madam President. All police vehicles have undergone the general maintenance for the month. For code enforcement, I get report general progress.
You want to keep moving?
Yes, I do. I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2020 road program bid to AF Damon for $58,722 for our roads to be resurfaced.
Any questions on the motion? Mrs. Higgins, will you do a roll call, please?
I certainly will. Okay, where's my motion? Here we go. Ms. Guy? Yes. Mr. Sidlow?
Aye.
Yes. Mr. Swiger?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Bolt?
Yes.
Mrs. Percival?
Yes. Thank you
Unanimous.
so much.
Okay. You got a second on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to thank Ryan, our roadmaster, for power washing the full memorial over there. He's keeping up with the signs, the faded signs when he gets the chance. And other than that, I can report general progress.
Super, thank you. As everybody noticed, we will continue with the road program. I don't have a start date, but Ms. Virginia may. This is coming out of our liquid fuel amount, and we will, if we have not already applied for county aid through the county. Any questions for Councilman Capabianco? Moving on to ordinances, Councilman Schwager.
Just to go back, looking at the agenda, question for the mayor. Did you veto ordinance 562, the vehicle and traffic?
I'm sorry?
Did you veto ordinance 562, the vehicle and traffic, or did you sign it?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was going to mention that. I spoke with council about that, and I was advised that the embedded section concerning Blossom Boulevard had been removed from that particular ordinance,
Yes.
and that was my only concern. So there will be no veto of that ordinance, and that ordinance is now under the borough code, and now in effect.
Just wanted to clarify, looking at what was there on the agenda. There was some questions about solicitor permit fees. In our ordinance, currently it's listed as $500. I've done a little bit, very briefly, trying to go through as best I could some of the other boroughs and townships, some of their other fees, and of the ones that I've looked at, we are far and above the highest. As to what we should set it at, I have no idea, but it should definitely be, in my opinion, lower.
Did you check with local governments and what were their fee structures?
Eddystone was $50. That's, again, looking at code E3, what E360. For most of them, Eddystone was, I found as $50 per month. Media was only $20 per year, but they have those huge flea market. They get just volume. Upper Darby was $200 a year. Springfield actually had a specific line item in their ordinances for ice cream, water truck, or water ice trucks, and theirs was $350 per year per vehicle. So I mean that's a little bit of what I could find. Could not find anything, any specific values for Upland or Brookhaven. I looked on their sites. Nothing specific. They didn't have anything listed specifically. So, I mean, like I said, my suggestion would be to definitely lower it, even if we want to make a specific line item for ice cream trucks, water ice, to address that. And we're small borough, and it's a little harder for the vendor to make up the difference here as opposed to making up that application fee in Springfield.
What would you recommend that the yearly fee would be?
Another $50 does get tacked on to that amount for the inspection by the health inspector. So whatever it is, it'll be plus the,
So I believe the permit fee is $300 and the inspection fee is $200. There's $200 for the license and $200 for the inspection.
oh, I don't, okay.
Councilman, what would you recommend?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what would be a good amount. Maybe go with the Springfield amount of $350 per year, or Upper Darby. I think. Oh, that's one I mentioned. Upper Darby at $200 per year.
So in essence, you're only leveling at $100 because that fee stays in place, which is the license fee and the inspection fee. If it per se is an ice cream truck.
Okay.
So to do yourself any justice, you're going to go lower than that.
Now, I thought the ordinance had a separate fee for the inspection of $50, wasn't it? So,
Then we need to be specific on the ordinance as to what the fees are
What's
and
required.
where they are
whether the
as differentiated.
yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Who makes the level of money for the inspection and the license? Where does that come from, the county, or is that what we, as
That's
a borough?
we can determine.
Okay, so
Yes.
can we lower the, because I agree with Councilman Sawyer that it is astronomical. I had trouble when I was recreation, especially the ice cream, moms that refused to come and say, I don't make enough cover coming to the Parkside. So if we could lower each of the costs, keep the health inspectors at the same.
Then why don't we split it in half? Half the cost for the license and half the cost for the inspection.
That'd be fine. Open to any suggestions.
What, in the last several years, what entities have paid the solicitor's fee? Is it just the ice cream truck that we're talking about, or there
Yes,
are any
because
other
we don't issue permits for door-to-door solicitation. That's actually why the price was set so high, 500, to deter anybody that wants to come in and knock on doors.
So we would make a send
So this is really, this is really
Just
the ice cream truck fee. There's no other vendors.
So
That's correct.
so if we wanted to make
It
a
needs to be specific to ice cream trucks, so that
Right,
we don't, so it differentiates between door-to-door solicitation.
right, so if we
Yes.
did a separate line item code similar to what Springfield did, specifying like ice cream, water ice, or the like.
Correct.
Okay.
And I mean, I think 100 and 150 is, 250 is
I agree.
reasonable.
Vice President, did you have something?
I'd like to see the little ice cream truck.
Well, we all know how I
I don't
do.
have to get too deep with this.
Charlie, there's one thing you might want to consider with regard to the ice cream truck. I try and only issue one permit to one truck, whether it be ice cream or whatever, so that we don't have 5 or 6 ice cream guys going through the borough and driving kids crazy. So you might want to put that in the ordinance, that it's limited to one vendor, yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that, because I might like Mr. Soft.
Yeah, you know.
We all know.
First
a lot.
come, first served. He gets here first, he gets it.
But for the kids, they want Jack and Jill. So can we limit it to 2 to give people a variety?
That's fine.
I mean, Michelle,
You're the
you're
president.
Mr. Softy, and Sarah,
You got chocolate all the time.
yeah,
There you go.
and Luke. So can we limit it to, let's say, 2?
Sure, that's fine with me.
Councilman, do you want to work up a draft on this?
Yeah, I'll get in contact with Mr. Wells and we'll figure something out.
So that I'm clear for the minutes, you're going to charge half the license fee and half the inspection fee? And what about the solicitation permit?
There's still no solicitation. This would strictly be for ice cream vendors.
So that's not considered solicitation?
No.
Okay, so it would be,
Yes, strictly for ice cream.
Are you
food.
talking about reducing the inspection fee?
yes,
Then you're going to have to reduce the inspection fee for everybody in the borough. Phil and Jim's, everybody.
No, this is just under ice cream vendors, food vendors, that would strictly just take in those two.
But the truck's not inspected any way differently than Phil and Jim's would be inspected. Everything has to be measured, everything has to be temperaturized, everything, they have to have permits where the food's coming from, where they're buying the food.
And the inspection's 150, correct?
The inspection's 200. It's 100 for the license and 100 for the inspection. And then the borough gets half of that inspection.
I think if we specify in the ordinance,
You
this
go
is right,
300 then.
this will refer to mobile food vendors. I think that may resolve the situation.
And we would have to go to $300 instead of $250.
I think it's right.
300, I think is reasonable.
I think it's reasonable.
For a tiny little town like ours.
They're gonna make that one summer. At my house, in the shell.
If it's just an amendment to the,
Yes, that's correct. It would be amending ordinance number 416.
so we don't have to go for advertisement or anything like that.
No, we're kind of requiring that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Councilman, did you have anything else to say?
No, other than that, just report general progress.
Super. License and inspections, Councilman Long?
Thank you, Madam President. Permits issued was for building residential 7, commercial 0. Plumbing residential was 3, commercial 0. Mechanical residential 0, commercial 0. Electrical residential 2, commercial 0. Sorry. Use and occupancy inspections were completed 5. Re-inspections completed was 1. There were no street opening permits issued. And this was submitted to me by Joe Ferguson.
Any questions for the councilman on license and inspections? Councilman, do you have anything else to say?
Just what we had talked about earlier, but I don't know if you want to go under new business.
Why don't we just keep it up because I know you have to leave for work.
Okay. This has to do, and I put my phone on this one.
It's okay.
Okay. Take this off. After last month's meeting, we had discussed about the camera issues and all that, and Councilman Guy, she felt that at this point, everybody's going streaming, which I do agree on that. Streaming is part of the new thing for everybody, but the problem is we have the older residents that are still comfortable with Comcast, with cable. So I did some digging and checked around. So made a few phone calls, and I called a couple of the neighboring boroughs and was able to obtain the name and phone number of the Comcast representative to discuss Comcast providing Parkside with their own cable channel. Because that was what we basically wanted, was on TV, having a cable channel so all the residents know what's going on, they feel everything's going on. There's no there is transparency. So the email I received back from the Caton was Comcast will have to come out and do a survey to find a cost for construction to place fiber in the building so we can get the signal back to the head end. Once they have the cost, we can evaluate our options with the borough. Other options include a YouTube channel that could be seen on our X1 platform where we can discuss the programming needs of the borough. She will reach out to our engineering team and get this request for the survey process ASAP. What she was told by the representatives that having Comcast coming out and setting us up on our own cable station, it would be costly. But she wasn't able to give me a cost until after the survey. So they have to come out, they have to do the fibers, they have to do all the survey. So I have a feeling it's going to be quite costly, not to mention we have the initial cost and then the monthly cost of having the cable station. So if we choose that path, Comcast channel, those residents that do not use Comcast as their cable provider would also not be able to view this. This is strictly for Comcast, so anybody who has RCI, Xfinity, Extreme, they won't be able to see any of the broadcasting. So I dug a little more deeper. As mentioned from the Comcast representative, having our own YouTube channel. This is easily set up and the meetings can be broadcasted using our own YouTube channel. Having our own channel, which can be accessed through the internet, and for those that have Comcast, as there are cable providers, they can access YouTube through Comcast as well. Meaning that you don't have Comcast, you can still see the YouTube channel as long as you have internet access. One option is having a camera and microphone set up in the council chambers. With Todd's assistance, he was able to get information what we would be needed. I have some of the information here for everybody. You guys can look at. Let me just pass these on down, so everybody has an idea what we're talking about. Yep. We would have a Panasonic video camera tripod, and tabletop microphones with a set of 8. So all the microphones would be set across these tables. They would also be hooked into the camera so that the camera feed and the voices together. So in that place, there's no question of anybody doing any editing, not taking stuff out of the tape before it's broadcasted. Councilman Capiano has the offer to do the wiring for us, which would save us a huge amount of money. The total cost for the equipment would be around $1,640 with a price of $300 to $500 as a buffer for miscellaneous equipment, such as cables and clamps. I'm not sure what all we would need, but I think I gave a generous amount of money for the buffering. Suggestion would be to disable, and I would also disable the comment features on social media and YouTube channels as other boroughs do this as well. We don't need any political comments or agendas should be allowed as the Parkside's Facebook does this. Either promotes or promotes political agendas or opinions. We're broadcasting the meetings for informational purposes and viewing purposes only. We don't need rude comments, debates, or most of all inflated stories on social media as coming to pass. As always, if anyone has a question about what's going on, they can contact the office, call, email, or call into the council members. And they send questions. Somebody will get back to them. If they can't see the video or they have a question about the video. Or they can always come to the meetings. Everybody's welcome. We've been pushing that for years. And that's a meeting, as you can see. Don't get many. I spoke with President Percival, and she agreed that this would be a perfect way of being transparent. What better way of being transparent than having the meetings broadcasted both visually and verbally to all the residents? And the monies that we talked about would come from the recreation fund due to COVID. Since we're not going to have any recreational, the money we had to put it for budget, we can transfer some of the money to cover the cost for this. I'd like to make a motion to go forward with the purchasing of this equipment. You can wait and see what Comcast is going to come with in the budget, but I just think it's going to be a huge amount. And the monies that we get from Comcast and all that, we need it. So
What is your total amount in the motion?
Total amount for everything, including the buffering.
2,000?
Yeah, 2,000, about $2,200, I would say.
And that's maximum.
Yeah, I mean, make sure. My math is not the best. 25? 25. Max.
Max.
But that's giving a huge bump.
That's huge.
I just don't want to have to come back later and say, oh, I need another $100 for wiring. I don't want to make them done. I'd rather just, and then just say, this is what we used.
Okay.
Give them money back. Yes.
Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Questions on the motion?
May I ask a question, Madam President?
Mayor?
On page 2 of your proposal, it's the discussion on the microphones. Now, there's it's 8-channel wireless. Okay, so the microphones are 8-channel, right? Is that and that includes 8 tabletop mics. We have more than 8 people at the
Well, I
table.
don't think we need to have, everybody needs a microphone. That's why I figured one there, a couple here around.
That's fine.
Yeah, or we could hand it back and forth. Everybody wants to have a microphone.
Good. All right.
I also think with the microphone, now that we have to wear masks, it'll be a lot easier to hear after last month's meeting, trying to hear it on tape,
It was
to
rough.
hear what was going on.
It was rough.
So this would eliminate the, what did he say? Oh, he said this, but it really wasn't what that person said.
Right.
So I just feel that this might alleviate the cheapest route to go. Comcast would be great. When I spoke to Aston, they were the first borough to have this done, but Comcast went to them. So they don't pay anything. All that was done by Comcast. They actually used to have a guy that came to the meetings every month. Took care of it and then would transmit it back. Now they rebuilt, they built something. So it's just,
You get the karaoke machine for that.
I'm sure.
Oh, same.
And also.
Mrs. Guy had a question?
Yeah, it's not possible to just take the video that Michelle's taking and
Well,
put
the problem-
We thought about that. And that's where we have the problem with the sound. That it's not picking up the sound, everybody's muffled. Even though we take our masks down, this way the microphone's gonna capture what we say, and it'll be blended in with the visual.
So
We have asked our IT person to do this every month for us, and I'm sure he's gonna get tired of me asking.
we couldn't just do the microphones and then use the phone, I mean,
I'm not an IT, I don't know how that would be able
Nick,
to
that
blend in.
That, from my understanding of talking to everybody, in the last couple of days on this, you actually need a mixer for the
Oh, yeah, I'm
microphones.
sorry. I did forget, there is a mixer and a receiver box in there.
Right, that have to go into the system. That,
Right.
your microphones and your mixers go into a system, and that system then goes into the camera. So that it's a compacted, kit, so that the sound coordinates with the visual.
And it
So
also
it's a
takes,
package deal.
and it takes care, we don't have to worry about anybody editing anything
Correct.
that we don't want to put out there, because then you're gonna have the sound not to the visual part. So we're trying to keep it all one part, and I would love to have Comcast, and then we can also put this out on YouTube, for those that don't have internet or, you have to have YouTube, internet to get YouTube. But it covers every base of whatever provider you have. If you have Comcast, you can actually go on your Comcast and watch YouTube. You don't have to bring it up on the internet.
And we have our own YouTube channel.
Yeah, we would have stories for informational purposes.
What more do you want?
Oh, yeah, and that's.
I can see you going on YouTube making your own little
Does
videos.
anybody else have,
Anybody
does anybody else have questions on the motion?
Would the camera be available for when things get back to normal, a bit for community days and things of that nature?
I would think so, because it's gonna be on its own tripod as well, like I said, that one. we have.
Because I mean, that way it's getting a little bit more use.
Right,
Or that.
right. I would think it could be. Yes. I mean, you could use it for all the events, because we have a dedication coming up for the park. That would be nice to put out onto the,
On our YouTube channel.
on our YouTube channel. So, we could wait until we hear from Comcast, but I really think Comcast is just not going to be feasible, and it's not going to be fair to all the residents. And with the streaming, I mean, we just got streaming in our house. And for a lot of the older residents, they're comfortable with cable, now trying to push streaming. I think Michelle doesn't have streaming yet.
Yes, I do.
You do have streaming?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on the motion? Mrs. Higgins, will you do a roll call vote?
I will. Mr. Sidlow.
Aye.
Okay, Councilwoman Guy. Councilman Swiger.
Yes.
Councilman Papabianco.
Yes.
Vice President Paul.
Yes.
President Percival.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Then we will ask Councilman Long to proceed with the project, purchase the equipment. And I would like to take a moment to thank Councilman Long. He's put this package together and contacted Comcast within days of our last meeting, and has been very proactive to create transparency and also communication for our community.
I could have done it without offering Brookhaven and asking people to talk to them.
Yes, and also, Mr. Bennett, thank you so much for your expertise.
And I have to agree with Councilman Guy, trying to call Comcast to get this, it's a nightmare.
You did great.
3 times I was, and then take your phone number and we'll get back to you, if you get disconnected, get disconnected.
You did great. I thank you so much. Do you have anything else this evening?
That's it.
Moving on to emergency management, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Madam President. We're still following all CDC guidelines within the borough limits. There has been no feedback from the county on reimbursements for disinfection of vehicles or police overtime for the civil unrest. I'm hoping to hear something soon, but no guarantee. I'm going to hop right into the fire marshal report. Report general progress. We have not had major incidents within the last 30 days. But in the last 4 days, we've had a fire every day over the last 4 days. So next month will be a little busier than this month. Health inspector report and also the fire marshal report. 15 out of 19 commercial properties will all be inspected in the borough now. Other than that, general progress.
Super, thank you very much. I did hear them tapping out the last 2 days. Any questions for Mr. Powers? Moving on to the finance report, Vice President Bull.
Thank you, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen. I'd also like to let everyone know that the independent municipal annual audit 2019 has been completed. We've come back as healthy with essentially $102,920. I don't want to call it surplus, but
Plus.
we're good.
In the
Yeah,
plus.
we're not at 47, we're not distressed, we don't have any issues.
Thank
If
goodness.
we came back where we have the proper bandwidth, we need to operate as a borough in a healthy fashion. So that's a tribute to everyone working together here and the professional staff as well. So I want to thank everybody for that. And with that, I have general progress for the finance report. The Woodlock project for the Ford Fitness Trail. I do have general progress for that. We do need to have to get something together to commemorate it and move it forward. I know we're having the COVID thing. But I want to publicly thank Todd Bennett for the Parkside this month. It's fantastic. It's got a lot of really good articles in it, and there is actually a nice article about the Ford Fitness Trail. So thank you for that. It's fantastic work. That I will report general progress.
Any questions for Vice President? Moving on to recreation, Councilman Schwager.
Considering the president's report, report general progress at this time.
Super, thank you. Moving on, Mrs. Guy, did BNL leader report?
We had in the month of June, 7.75 tons of recycling. I would like to reschedule the electronic recycling event. I don't know about you guys, but I have a lot of stuff to recycle. Can I try to do that maybe in September or October?
I think that's up to the hauler.
Okay, I know,
How
but
much it would
there was
cost.
a budget. I mean,
Yeah.
we had budget.
We budgeted 500 or 550? No,
I have no idea.
it was 500 or 550.
All right, I'll contact them and see if I can schedule that for Saturday.
Just for electronics.
Yeah, whatever they were gonna do, we were gonna do it in May, I think it was.
They canceled that, yeah. Anything else, Mrs. Guy?
General progress.
Moving on to the tax collector, Mr. Fisher, no report.
No report.
Ms. Catania, nice to see you back. I'm glad you're well.
And I am glad to say that I can see everyone.
Aw.
And surgery went really well. So, and because of the wonderful donor family, I can say I can see everyone. Consider donations. We already did the road program. I do have an invoice for AF Damon for last year's program, so we need to get that paid. So we have the completion report by August. I do have some news about Woodlock, although it's not finalized. We hear that the final light is to be in by the end of this week. Keep our fingers crossed. I don't know that truly to be true. And otherwise, I can report just general progress.
Great. Any questions for our engineer? Moving on to the solicitor's report, Mr. Wills.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A couple things to report. Number one concerns the countywide tax reassessment that is presently going on. Every property owner in Parkside Borough should have received earlier this month a new notice with regard to their tax assessment for the particular real estate property. That is, in theory, supposed to be at 100% fair market value as to what a ready, willing, and able buyer and seller in an arm's length transaction would pay for that particular piece of real estate. If a property owner is dissatisfied with that particular assessment, they have up until September the 1st to file an appeal with the Delaware County Board of Reassessments, and they have waived the filing fee, so there is no filing fee should the property owner wish to pursue an appeal. Secondly, concerns the 2019 borough audit. I was in contact earlier this week with our auditor, who is in the process of conducting that 2019 audit. I was pleased to advise the auditor that there is presently no threatened or pending litigation of any nature that would certainly affect the financial well-being of the borough. And again, I certainly would thank all borough council for that particular news, because unlike other municipalities, we are not involved in needless or frivolous litigation. And again, that is through the exercise of good judgment of this particular borough council. Other than that, I can report general progress.
Any questions for the solicitor? At this time, we do call the citizens. If you'd like to address council with a question, would you raise your hand and come to the podium? Would you like to just stand there, Kim?
Kimberly Roman, 29 East Cheltenham Road. I actually just wanted to give $100 donation to the podcast, or whatever we're deciding to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Would like to go to-
Very, very nice.
No, go towards the.
Video?
The video clip.
Well, there you go. We got to start. Thank you, Kim. That was very kind.
Thank you very much.
Please, another time. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to address council? Questions, concerns? Hearing none, we will move on. Does any council member have any unfinished business? Anybody have any new business?
I do, but
Okay.
maybe Jane can answer it. So for that, as everyone knows, Justin Moore is currently under the agreement of sale with Hopper. The municipal engineers had a meeting last week with Delcora to discuss a few things that are required by DEP for the sale to a private entity, as well as some other 537C planning that needs to be done for long-term control for the treatment plant. That being said, there is a Act 537 revision that needs to be done for transfer of property to a private entity. Delcora has provided, I believe today, a copy of a resolution that will need to be vetted through the planning commission. So we will have to have a planning commission meeting. They're hoping it would be sometime in September that you would do that. After the planning commission acts and has any comments for the 537 plan, quite frankly, we're going through it now. I'll provide our comments to each one of our municipal clients so that they have something the planning commission can take a look at, and then as well make their own decisions about the plan. Once that's completed, they will ask by January that the Borough Council adopt a resolution with this 537 plan. That's the first one. The second one, for the long-term planning, they are looking at alternatives that doesn't affect Prospect or Parkside Borough. Parkside Borough But it does affect some of Ridley Township, Prospect Park, Norwood, and those that are north along this eastern corridor of Delaware County that are serviced by not only Delcora, they're treated up at the western or the southern treatment plant in Philadelphia. So by the Philadelphia Water Department. They are getting surcharged for the flows because of I&I problems. So DEP is requiring that there be a 537 for this long-term planning, which includes various alternatives to get those flows out of the city of Philadelphia and down to the treatment plant in Chester City. Right now, there's various alternatives. The plan is out there. They've asked us to take a look at that as well, not municipalities, but municipal engineers. They haven't asked for resolutions, but at some point in time, they will be asking for resolutions. I will tell you that one thing that was emphasized by DEP is that we are going to have to control the inflow and infiltration. So I want residents to understand that as the plumbing, if you are selling your house, transferring your house, the plumbing inspector is going to be looking to see whether you have any kind of a sump pump that's tied to your sanitary sewer system, and as well, taking a look at your lateral to see whether it's in good condition. They may ask that you either line the lateral, they may have you take any kind of floor drains that you have in your basement and cap those to try to eliminate a lot of this inflow and infiltration. There are municipalities that when it rains, they get 4 to 5 times the flows because of all of the stormwater that's getting into the system. So that is a big part of this 537, the second 537. So I wanted to mention it because it is something you are going to have to convene a planning commission meeting, set that up. Again, that could be August, September. I quite frankly think we ought to wait till September so that we have a good idea of what this plan or both plans actually say.
You use the term 537. What is
But it's actually, Act 537 requires that you do planning for your sewage. So the first one that was done was back in the 70s. And each time, as a matter of fact, we don't have it here, but when we, for example, did the school, when the school came in, we had to do what they call a 537 review. Not a plan, but we have to, it's for planning purposes. What your flows are going to be in the next 5 years. Do you have the capacity for conveyance to get it to where it needs to go in order to treat it? And then do you have the capability of treating it? So there are things that you look at over, say, a 20-year period to determine where you need to be. So it's a strategic plan, more or less, for sanitary sewage disposal.
We never passed any of the lateral inspection ordinances, and we tabled all that several years ago.
Yes, and probably at some point in time, they are going to ask them to revisit that. As a matter of fact, I thought Delcora, and I probably shouldn't say this since this is being recorded because I'm not exactly sure, but I thought if you were in the Delcora system, because you're owned and maintained by Delcora, that you were required to have that.
We actually have an agreement in which, and I'm not sure how the wording goes, that with Delcora that we actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia, we own that section of Delcora. For the changeover in ownership, we have to sign off on it. When we look at the lateral ordinances, which some other municipalities have, the cost, there was a cost issue. And to have your lateral inspected could be $500, and that was back a couple years ago. Now, who pays for that? Is it the current owner? Is it the buyer? What happens if the lateral is cracked and needs slip shot? And there's a couple different ways to correct this. And as Lisa knows, I dealt with this when I was employed from the very beginning. You also have to have a plumbing inspector who is certified to review the tapes when you're shooting those lines And he has to have a certain type of credentials to do this. And the person shooting the lines must have certifications. And I know there's not many in the county. And again, years ago, it was $500 for a contractor who is certified to shoot your lines to come out and do that. We chose not to, and I think Mayor, you may have been president of council at that time.
Correct, I believe that's true.
And we thought it was cost prohibitive, and because we have a different agreement with Delport than several other municipalities, we were able to avoid having that lateral ordinance put in place. Now, do we have to do it in the future? I would think there's a lot to work out, and I would not be happy with it. Because it's very expensive for the homeowner and the borough to get in an inspector that has the credentials, and then you have to have specific contractors who are certified to shoot these lines.
It's a video inspection of the
Yes.
lines. They have to do it for NESCO standards. They don't necessarily need to have a NESCO certification. Anyone that does a review, for example, in my office, I have 3 people in my office that are NESCO certified. And then we have plumbing inspectors who are also NESCO certified. So we have several people that can do those kinds of reviews. Typically, just as anybody would have to fix their roof if they were selling their house, fix the concrete in their house, or put screens in their windows, which are all these U&O issues that come up. The lateral is the same, where the property owner would either do it or you could sell it as is, and then the new property owner would end up having to do it. But that would be a decision of the 2 parties that are involved with the house sale.
I think a lot of conditional UNOs are going to be
Be a
notified by
major
me.
issue.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
major issue to get into.
Yeah.
And I think if we need to tackle that, then that's something down the road.
I think that's something that will probably be part of the 537 for the alternatives to get to the long-term control. Because the real reason for the long-term control is the fact that you've got I&R. You've got an elderly housing development. Most of your homes are 50 years old. A lot of the laterals are over 50 years old. The joints in a lot of the terracotta pipe, which is most of your laterals, are starting to fail. That holds them together start to fail. So you're starting to get groundwater into the systems. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's grants out there to take care of that. PennVest has one, as a matter of fact. And you, as a private property owner, can go to a certain bank. I should take this off. I'm sorry.
Get a loan. 'Cause it could be expensive.
PennVest, well, they're 1%. They're 1% loans. PennVest has a list on their website of various banks that you can go to as a private property owner if you need assistance in repairing your sanitary laterals. You go to that particular bank, and there is a fund through the PennVest system. It's a state agency, it's a state authority that will pay for that under a loan program through that particular bank. So there's ways to do it. If you are a senior citizen, the county Office of Housing and Community Development has programs that you can have the work completed on. I believe it's if you need a ramp at your house, mechanical systems, sanitary. I'm trying to think of the others, and I'm going by memory, and I shouldn't. But if you look on the OHCD website, I think weatherization is one of them as well. The list is long, so if anyone's thinking about doing it, you need to get on a waiting list because there's so many people in the county that are looking to it. But the last PennVest workshop that I went to, they actually talked about this program, and it's being underutilized. They have a cash and money, and they're not getting it spent. So it's out there for anybody that want to use it.
And a lateral to replace is expensive.
It's about $7,500.
Yeah. About 10,000. Anybody have?
I'm using a better contractor.
I just had a motion call in a couple months.
Get it right, or that. Anybody have any other new business?
Just as follow-up, by ordinance, the Borough Planning Commission consists of every member of the Borough Council. So for our new Borough Council members, you are also a member of the Borough Planning Commission. I suggested to the Council President that we consider holding that either the second or the third week of September. That will need to be an advertised meeting comply with Pennsylvania sunshine. So, if not, this evening, we could probably set that meeting at the August monthly meeting, then the date. Certainly have the wisdom of our spur engineering to explain the modifications of 537.
So if we think. Only the operation. If we fail to approve this plan, does that hold up the sale of?
Del Cor, I believe, is already sold.
Well, the county council.
It's under litigation, so I don't really want to get into that. All I've been told is that, that right now, DEP, this is before the litigation, the DEP was requiring that resolution be of every municipality that is serviced by Del Cor. So they're looking at 100% participation for the resolution. I don't know whether that will hold with the current litigation that's out there, but I don't know that I have a little bit.
Okay.
Any other new business, old business, and can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
And I thank everybody for